Well, um, thanks everyone for joining. I think we're all excited to jump into this one. And Jen, I know you've been super stoked to talk about this topic, but
Yeah.
I'll kind of allow you to lead. I think, what we're talking about is traditional marriage. Does it still exist? Is it something that people want nowadays? So go ahead and I guess kick us off. What are your thoughts?
No, I was, just thinking a lot over the last year about what that looks like. I am of an age where I can confidently say that I've been in at least one very serious relationship, and I treated it like a marriage. However, on both of our parts, we didn't take the plunge. We just didn't take that extra step. And I mean, for me, I know my reasons why, and I'm sure maybe he had his reasons why, or whatever the case may be is, but it's just something to think about. I think that, um, 50 years ago, there was a very distinct standard. You got married, you bought a house, you had children, the end. The wife was a stay-at-home mom, all those things. And that is changing and evolving every day. So I was curious to jump on this conversation with everybody and just kind of get your insight, especially to male perspective. And then also additionally, Madison, what do you think about that? Do you feel like internally that it's changing, or, how do you, okay, I guess I'll start the question with you. You've been married before. And so having said that, do you see the value in getting married ever again? Legally getting married?
I think for marriage, yes, I do see the value. I think it mainly comes when it comes with children. And I think for me at least, I don't know you and your ex's reasons as to why you guys didn't. It'd be interesting to hear what you think your reason was and his. But I think a lot of times people, again, we live in this world of extremes. Like everything we hear is extreme. So for a lot of people, men and women, when all you've heard is, relationships don't last, marriage is in a divorce. Oh, if you get divorced, you're going to have to pay all this money, child support. There's probably just an innate fear that comes along with the idea of, well, why do it? What's going to be the benefit? And I think as more information has become readily available to people, there's been less of a need where I think, to your point, traditionally, people felt, look, this was the common standard. Like, we get married because the wife can stay at home. The husband was making enough money to support the family. Mm-hmm. Well, the minute that became women were in the workforce and they had to say for themselves, I think a lot of that became that women didn't necessarily feel the need to get married right away. So then now they're delaying marriage, delaying having kids. And part of that is just a socioeconomic thing where they're now more independent. If I don't need a man to take care of me and take care of myself, then I don't technically need marriage. And then men saying, well, if I'm hearing all these horror stories about getting married, divorce, child support, well, do I want to take that risk? So I think that, there's a confluence between a socioeconomic thing and also just an innate social fear thing, that a woman doesn't want to feel trapped when she's feeling like she has a lot of freedom and options and opportunity in the world. And a man may feel like, well, what's the point? Because I'm not really gaining much. I'm not getting a dowry from her parents or her family, and I'm getting all this property. And, it's just, I'm just committing myself to this thing. So I think that there's still value in marriage, especially when it comes to children, showing the bond, having the same last name, legally having certain rights to things. Because again, people don't have wills and transfer of rights and property. So if you're married, at the very least, you have that protection.
That's a great point. But I think what I feel like you're saying is that there maybe in certain circumstances would be a just general fear of fully committing. Is kind of, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's definitely what I hear you're saying. So guys, what are your thoughts? Brian, you're married. Go ahead.
Yeah, Brian, tell us what you feel.
I'm married. Yeah, so I've been married for 3 years. I actually hate to hear you say that, Adam, because I feel like, I get it. I think a lot of guys are scared to take the plunge. And I want to start this by saying, I always hate to come off. I'm very happy in my relationship. So I hate to come off like, everything's rainbows and butterflies and great. But I've been in bad relationships before. So I understand being hesitant to wanting to get into another, but I do still really believe that traditional marriage still exists and can be great.
Yeah. Look, I agree. I'll let Madison jump in, but I'll follow up with some thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting hearing all of this. I love this discussion, and I feel like I talk about this with friends a lot. I think it's interesting in the sense of I don't want to lose faith in the pillar of marriage or that title of being married. I think there is something really sweet and traditional about it, whether it be, a legal partnership, but okay, let's just talk about marriage, getting married, having the marriage license, right? I come from a family, my parents have been married 36 years now and happily. And so a part of me is like, oh, I want that. I'm attracted to that idea. But then I also know that flip side of the coin of like divorce, right? The fear that men might carry in that sense of maybe not wanting to pull the trigger or feeling forced to. I would hate to be on that receiving end of someone that was like, oh, we've been dating for 7 years, I guess I gotta pop the question. That definitely is like no-go for me. So it's interesting. I think I would feel really passionate and very comfortable getting married if that was what me and my partner decided on. But I also think if I was in a relationship where it was completely trustworthy, faithful, we had our boundaries that we work within that, and we decided just to be partners with each other, I feel like I would be okay with that as well. And I might be eating my words in a couple of years, but I think right now in my life and having been in long-term relationships and feeling not wanting to rush things or feel like having to do certain things, like you were saying, Jen, the steps, right? It's like, oh, you've lived together now. Oh, now you get married and then you have kids, and not feeling that you need to hit all of those archetypes of a happy couple. So it's interesting. I think I am interested in marriage, but I also would be down, I feel like, for a non-traditional marriage or non-traditional relationship.
Just to kind of touch upon something that you said, and Adam, tell me if you agree. I mean, you mentioned not wanting to be in a situation where someone waits 7-8 years and kind of feels pressure to do it. I would actually argue that most guys, without that kick in the rear,
would never.
They prolong it as long as possible, which sounds terrible. And Adam, I don't know if you agree, but I think guys are so. I whenever I'm giving girlfriends advice, I always tell them they really have to dumb it down and just think of guys like children, all right? So unless you hold their feet to the fire, it may not happen right away.
That's interesting.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
go ahead. I want to hear Adam's perspective.
No, I was gonna say that I don't disagree. I think that a lot of guys might think of it that way, and I think it's because for any person, right? If we're gonna do something, especially nowadays, we have so much information at hand. We have so many things at our fingertips. You have to ask yourself, like, what's really the reason? Like, what's the reason I'm going to do this? What's the benefit? So for me personally, like, yeah, if I was in a long-term committed relationship, we had a child, to me, the ramifications of the logistics not being handled, like I get in a car accident, I die, I didn't have a will, let's say, that addressed that they needed to get X, Y, and Z. I'd be doing it mainly for those reasons, that like my family's protected, the property, the assets, the investments are protected, everything is good. And I know that no matter what, I can then determine how that's going to be divvied up. But that's more of a truly logistic thing. And to be fair, marriage evolved that way, where property rights and ownership was done through marriage. So nowadays, I don't think that people really understand why they're doing it. I think they do think of it as a traditional social norm of like, well, at the 5-year mark, we get engaged. At the 10-year mark, we have to be married. At the, we have to have this at a kid at this age. And they don't really, I think people nowadays are questioning that more and saying, well, why am I doing this? So for the average guy or average girl, I don't think they have a real clear answer. I think their answer would be, well, it's just the way it's always been done. So I think the more people question that, the easier it is to say, well, I don't know if that's for me. And I think what Madison brought up is an interesting point, because your parents being married that long, I'm sure that they're the outlier in like the social group that you know.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
So now if you can imagine it.
Very happy.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you can imagine a society where the bulk of people, at least the bulk of people I know and most people I know, either their parents are not together or their parents are not in happy relationships. So then that's going to lead to a generation of children saying, well, there's no benefit and people are unhappy, then why should I even do this?
Yeah. And I think it's instilled in me kind of a pressure, right? It's like, it's been a positive and a negative, because I've seen it as an example. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible that they've gotten through all of this. They have 3 kids together. They've shared so much, and they truly are best friends and like partner. It's just so cool to see them, right? They're not perfect by any means. It's like any couple, right? They're not always sunshine and rainbows, but very happy. And on the other side of it, it has made me in my relationships, I'm way more picky. I'm way more like, no, because I'm like, if I'm not here to like, I'm not here to fuck around. Like, I'm here to either like be cool with you and like whatever that be, if that's boyfriend and girlfriend, if that's just what we have decided on that we are doing, you know, whatever that means. I think I am way more specific on who I spend my time with in a partnership. And so it's also given me that all three of us kids are not married, and we've all been in long-term relationships multiple times. And I think it's interesting that none of us have gotten married legally, because I think we're like, just making sure it's the right one. And I don't know if we'll ever get that confirmation other than just having faith in the relationship and that trust. But it has given me that also pressure of being like, ooh, I see what's good. And I don't know if I have that to that level with the person I'm with. But then I also have to think in retrospect, like, where were my parents when they were 28, you know, whatever that age? Like, my mom had her first kid when she was 27. That's only 2 years older than me, and that's wild. So it's like thinking about where she was in retrospect then, and my parents' dynamic then to what they are now. It's hard to disassociate.
I applaud you for being more critical. I think that's what people need to do, especially if you believe in you know, the traditional marriage. When you get older, you know, you're not really dating for fun anymore. You shouldn't be dating for fun if you're looking to get married. You need to really look at, you know, can I spend the rest of my life with this person, and will this work?
That's right.
Yeah. And I think it's also in that, like, I go into it still knowing that maybe I won't even get that marriage title. Like, I don't know if I don't know who I'm going to be. And I'm pretty fluid with like adjusting and compromising in relationships, because I don't have too strong of opinions. I feel like I can always see like devil's advocate a lot of the time. So if I had a partner that really made the argument that was like, marriage is shit, we shouldn't do it because of this and this, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I get it. Like, I would probably get along with it. But I do have a lot of faith and want or desire for a partnership that strong, right? Where it's like you and me, death till do we part, you know, what have you. So I don't know. I feel like, Jen, it feels like you might have that too, as far as like faith in future relationships.
Yeah, I think, you know, to ease your mind a little bit, for me, what it has always been about is that, you know, I think that I don't think you should be afraid of not finding the right person at all. I don't feel that in any way, shape, or form. I think that being self-aware, and I don't know, I like from a young age, so I've been proposed to a couple of times, but like on the receiving end of those proposals, I really had to like sit back, and even if I did accept 2 of them, you know, I still, in my mind, I thought, you know, this probably isn't the right fit for me. And yes, I'll accept this, but in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, you know, I really need to see how this unfolds. Like, are you the man for me? Can you step up? Do we see eye to eye on critical topics and that sort of thing? So I knew that and felt that at a young age, and I still feel that now. To answer your question, Adam, you know, the reason why we didn't get married, well, he would have gotten married, you know, every year, I guess, but it didn't mean the same thing to him that it does to me. And for me, even though I was giving him my time and my energy, I'm still very calculated in the risks that I take. So for me to align myself legally with that person just wasn't the right choice for me. Although I will say that any endeavor that I embark upon, you know, I take really seriously, because it's, you know, it's another human being. It's their time, it's their space, it's their energy. You know, I try to give the best of myself. And like you said, Madison, I mean, we function very much like a married couple. You name any, you know, specific topic, and that's how I saw things. But you know, we were not like-minded in, you know, what we wanted for the future. And so I never was comfortable with taking that next step. Does that make sense?
You know what's funny? It's like, I think as I'm drawing a similarity between what everyone's saying, I think it kind of proves the point that most people don't really have a true solid definition of what they think a marriage is, what they think it should be, and how it should play out. And I think, you know, part of what you're saying, Jen, is that you have your standard, but you're not really sure if the guy is meeting it. And so although we can say, I don't know if he's as serious about this as I am. And that's a function of definition, right? Like fundamentally, what does he really believe this is going to be? Now, if he'll do it because he'll just do it, then that's not really the same as saying, I know what I want to do.
Right.
And then for Madison's point, I think seeing your parents have such a good relationship, it might also make you question, well, is this person good enough? Will this play out this way? If he's lukewarm, well then, okay, that's fine. That's better than being committed to a person where I don't know if they'll meet the standard. And do I want to take the test if I'm not going to pass? Exactly. So then why take the test, right? And so same thing on your end, right? That there's that same connection that, well, if this guy doesn't think what I think, then why even take the test if I don't think I'm going to pass? Because we already know that the statistics around it, right? So it's just interesting. And I think that's why it comes down to definition. So many things in life come down to, well, what do you really want? Are we doing this just to make each other happy in the moment? Are we doing this for a long-term, agreement that we're saying we're committed to each other? Are we doing this for financial reasons? Are we doing this for the kids? What's the reason? And then we can have a starting point to talk about, well, what do we really want out of this?
Yeah, I agree. So from a romantic perspective, since you're an unmarried male, purely from romantic, you gave us the logical reasons as to why you would get married again. From a romantic perspective, if you did not have children and you met someone, I mean, do you still see the value in that?
It would depend on how much that partner wanted it. I mean, if she was like, look, like I've always wanted this, then her happiness would be paramount to me. So for example, if she was like, look, like I'm not really that big on it, I don't really care, then again, kind of like Madison, I wouldn't care as much either. I wouldn't care about the legal reasons kind of period, because I could structure all the legal things fine without that. For the kids, it feels like a different perception. That'd be the only reason. But from a romantic side, if a person really, really wanted it, then their happiness is now involved in that equation. And then I have to say, okay, well, I have to factor that in. Because now I might say, yes, absolutely, I would do it because it means so much to them, right? So it's almost like anything else in the relationship. The dynamic would be, I want to make you happy because we're going to have a happy relationship together. But I can't, I couldn't really say that from a logical point of view, it's the most logical thing. It would just be more about the functional, aspect of how that person felt day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year,
Interesting. So even though you have a standard definition of what a relationship would look like to you, you still think that, maybe that traditional marriage isn't necessarily something that you see a value in, sort of.
Yeah, not in a specific way, like not in a very like how it as a legal contract way. I don't think if there's unmarried people, people without children, if they don't have children, I don't really see a significant value in it. Now, again, if I shift that to say romantic, then I can say from a partner's point of view, like if I love, chocolate ice cream and my partner does all the grocery shopping and they never buy it. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to change my life, but I'm not going to be as happy as I could be. So, I would hope that a person would want to do things for me as well, right? If that was something that my partner truly, truly wanted and grew up thinking about it, and if you understood that the reasons why they wanted it were for them, not because, oh, well, my mom or dad told me to do this or my friends expect this. If it was truly their internal reason, I'd have no problem doing it, And again, I'd be smart enough to understand how to structure things in a legal way to make it, beneficial for both of us. But yes, there's a function. I think it's just a difference between if it's an emotional thing or a logical thing.
Brian, do you have any thoughts on this?
I actually have a question for you guys on this. So,
okay.
I mean, I agree with both of you guys. I mean, Madison, you said that you're fluid, and I think I'm the same exact way. I mean, to me, it was more about the relationship and the commitment than it was the actual, the paperwork, it's sitting in a safe somewhere. It means nothing to me. But I guess my question is, do you think individuals are more committed because of that legal paper than they would be?
Yeah, my quick answer, and I'll let you guys jump in, but my quick answer would be, it depends on the person, right? Because just like, if you're a religious person, does your life change because you believe in God or not? Technically, yes, right? If your belief says it's the best thing to do, then yes. But from a structural standpoint, it doesn't change at all. You are who you are, you do what you do, right? But your belief is something. So if you're a person who believes in the sanctity of marriage and the value and the commitment that it brings, and it's in your mind, and you go, no, when I have that, I just feel different, then absolutely it has value. But if you are like, well, it doesn't really matter today, tomorrow, whatever, I'll do it for you, then it's just not the same. So I think it depends on how the people view it, right? Because it's like a religion. If there's people who walk around, they say they're Christians or Catholics or Jewish, but they don't practice, but they'll say it. And there's people then who are very devout and they practice it, and it actually does affect their life. So that would, to me, be kind of like marriage.
Good answer.
That is a really good point. I think it makes me laugh because I'm like, oh, I know, I've been there, like where you talk to someone who is married and they're not being faithful, or you know what, and you're like, wow, you really have no chill. Like you're wearing this ring proudly, and yet you're hitting on this girl that's twice your age, or like twice younger than you, and you have no filter, like and it's just so funny to me, like the balls on some people, because like in my opinion, if I make that promise, whether it be like, I think this is just a piece of paper, whether that's a huge wedding, whether that's just in a courthouse in front of my family and friends, I am there is a promise to that, like being faithful, right? But of course, then once you get into that, there's open marriages, there's a lot of, so it's like really the boundaries that you set for yourself as a couple. But I do think it almost might make people rebel more, because I feel like if they have this structural, oh, I'm married, the whole ball and chain, sometimes guys feel like they need, like, it's really exciting and rebellious and sexy to go outside of their marriage. And I'm saying, guys, I know women do it as well, but I feel like it's more on the male side. Please call me out if you feel otherwise. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I do think sometimes that aids in wanting to rebel or wanting to not keep that promise. But like Adam said, there are different personality types, and it's going to be per person. There's going to be people that take a lot of faith in that and feel really good about being a married person and want to keep the sanctity of that. And there's going to be people that it doesn't matter to them. It's just a ring. It's just a piece of paper. So I like that question. It was a good question.
Jen?
Yeah, I agree with Adam as well. I think that it just boils down to your value system. For me, I think how you do small things is how you do all things. So
I like that.
I treat, like I said, everything that I do, if I'm going to take up the personal space and time of another individual, like trust and believe that I'm going to be loyal and faithful because that is my value system. And nobody has to tell me, and it doesn't require a piece of paper to keep me accountable. But not everybody holds those same beliefs. As I mentioned, I was in a situation very distinctly where it wouldn't have mattered if God himself would have given a golden seal of approval, for the relationship. It wouldn't have changed the dynamic or behavior of the other party. Does that make sense? So
yeah, and see, and that's exactly what I mean, right? Is it like that's mindset that starts with the idea that you guys have a certain fundamental set of beliefs that paper, no paper, God, no God, it'd be the same for you regardless, right? And there's some people, they know the definition of marriage, they know what it means, but like Madison's saying, it's like, well, they can step out, and why? It's because they were that person anyway. They would have been that person no matter what the definition was, because that's who they are. And so it's like it's funny. It makes me. I was watching something the other day, and they were talking about how a lot of like football players, they're religious. They score a touchdown, they point to God, and they go, oh, but God, Sunday is the day of rest. Like, so if you're really religious, you shouldn't be working, right? Like, it's that kind of thing. Like, so what's the definition of being a religious person? Can you play football on Sunday? I don't know, right? It depends on your definition, right? But like, that's the whole thing. Is that it's a really super crazy devout religious person might go, no, I can't play, because it's God's day of rest, right? So, and some person is like, no, I still believe everything, but I'm going to do this action different. And then some people are, very different, and they're going to step out of their marriage regardless of what they believe.
Another interesting point that I think about as well, and I've been in this situation directly, is also the symbolism, meaning like rings. So for instance, I'm an unmarried mother of a 5-year-old, and if I didn't have a ring on, of course there was always like a question mark, like when I drop her off to preschool and all these different things. And I have another friend who they chose to, so her partner wants to get married and she didn't. And so he got her a ring though. He's like, will you please just like at least wear this ring for me? It's symbolic. It means something to me. And she was telling me how like much it changed the perception. So she constantly got questions about, you know, was she married and this and that. And once she wore the ring, those questions stopped. You know, so she was a mother of 2 teenage boys. And so it's really interesting how all of those things play in together, because you'd like to say, well, it doesn't matter. Or Madison, for instance, like if you're saying that you're fluid and everything like that, have you ever thought about how you would feel without a ring in that situation? You know, because like it's just such a symbolic gesture of a commitment. You know, how does that factor in if you say, okay, we're going to be life partners, but I am going to get you a ring because I want it to mean, you know, something. I want you to have a token of our commitment to one another. Does that make sense? So that's another piece that I kind of think about as well, is that, you know, so what does that look like, you know, if you decide to be life partners? And I don't know, just an interesting concept. Any comments on the symbolism of rings and that sort of thing as well?
You're okay with that? I love that question. That's such a great point, Jen. And I've used the ring tactic as a single woman, you know, to help me. You know, I travel a lot for my other gig, and when I was traveling a lot by myself, even when I was in a long-term committed relationship, even if you tell the person that's hitting on you at the airport bar that you are in a committed relationship, they're going to still push it if they don't see a ring. And sometimes you don't even get those questions if you have a ring on. So I've definitely worn a ring on my ring finger, even though I was not engaged, definitely to avoid awkward conversations and things. So it's funny that you bring that up. I have thought about not having a ring moving forward, because it is such a symbol. It is, and like you were saying, you don't get those questions, you don't get probed as like, oh, you poor thing. You have a child and you're not, you know, it's like, and it is degrading. It's ridiculous. And I'm so sorry that you would ever deal with that. But I think more power to you in the sense of, you know what you want, and you're not going to settle for anything. Like, I think that's more miraculous as a woman, to not get into a marriage because you feel like you need to, or because it's going to be more acceptable by the public. Like, fuck that. So many parts of that, I'm like, I do see myself, like, of course it's romantic, and I love the fact that there's like, I'm not even a jewelry person, but someone bought me something that was specifically that they thought of me for. Of course there's romanticism to that, but yeah, I mean, now people get tattoos. Now my dad wears his ring on a necklace because his job is so hands-on. He's mechanical, and people have lost their fingers actually because of wedding rings. So he's always worn his wedding ring on a necklace. And we always joke because he still gets hit on at the grocery store all the time. He's a 65-year-old fox, and they're constantly like checking him out, or like, so what are you cooking? You know, and we always laugh about that. We're like, he's gotten to ride his whole life appearing unmarried when he's been in a committed relationship. So yeah, I don't know how to wrap this up, as far as I do see myself wanting that and yearning for that, but at the same time, and using it as a tool, like I said, I have in the past. Yeah. But I also don't think it's going to matter as much. I'll probably just mouth off to the people that are judging me.
You know what's funny is that the idea that, you know, look, like all symbolism, right? If you were a Christian 100 years ago and you didn't wear a cross, it meant something, right? If you know, to have your pronouns on the screen 10 years ago would have been odd. So I think as time goes on and this is more normalized, that more people are not getting married, more women are choosing not to have kids, period, right? People are delaying marriage and kids later and later in life. As this becomes more normal, this becomes more of a moot point, right? That, you know, so there is symbolism, but how will that symbolism evolve, right? How will it change throughout the years, where when this is normal for people not to, you may, you know, there may be some woman in the future who in 50 years has a kid, 2 kids, and no one even asks about it, because it becomes so much more normalized. Whereas today, you know, it's a little bit different. We're in that transitionary phase.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam Khalil. Thank you so much for listening to this video. I definitely want you to subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more content like this. But if this content had any value to you, click the like button as well.